So, welcome. My name is Kristi Faltorusso. I want to thank you all for joining the Success Coaching Monthly CS Mastermind webcast, where we bring together professionals from across the customer experience ecosystem, from customer success managers to support specialists and everyone in between. I am sitting in for Andrew Marks, who cannot be here today, so I am going to do my absolute best to make sure that I deliver the same experience that he does for you time and time again. Today's session is brought to you by Success Coaching, where they have helped nearly 40,000 customer-facing professionals from almost 100 countries develop the skills that they need to excel. Whether you're in customer success, support, or any customer-facing role, you can find the right program for your learning style. I can attest to this. I have put plenty of my teams through the program, highly recommend it. So if you are a leader, definitely consider it. If you are an individual contributor, go ahead and recommend it. You can find all the details of all you need to know about the program on the website, successcoaching.co, or you can engage in the chat. Ashley, our wonderful back-end host, you can't see her, but she is here. She will provide you with any links and coupon codes that are available right now. This CS Mastermind is all about real-world experiences. No theoretical frameworks, no abstract concepts here. We're going to dive in and offer you practical, tactical advice with actionable insights. So hopefully these are all things you can apply immediately in your role. It's something we all strive to do, and that's why we're all here. So I want to just introduce quickly today's topic. Today we're going to be exploring how to nurture long-term relationships in a digital first world. I know this is something that we're all probably trying to get right, and I'll probably have a lot of thoughts and opinions on, but I've got two experts here today that are going to talk about that. Before we get into things, I just want to do some quick housekeeping. So before we get started, we are recording this session. We will share and replay this next week, so please be patient while we prepare that for you all. Please use the QA buttons for questions. So at the bottom of your bar, you should see a little QA. If this is your first time here, we're going to put all the questions in the QA. We're going to leave plenty of time today to get to as many of those questions as possible. We are going to prioritize them by the ones that are upvoted the most. So if you see questions in there and you're like, ooh, that's a good one, go ahead and give it an upvote. The ones that have the most upvotes will be prioritized. For smooth sailing today, we're going to ask that you keep the chat window for commentary only. Okay, we want to make sure that you're engaging in the conversation. So if you've got anything to comment or contribute, add, please go ahead and do that. Otherwise, comments are going to go in the Q&A, and save your LinkedIn links for private direct messages. Now, I'm super excited to introduce our fantastic panelists today who are going to be sharing insights throughout our session. So we're going to go ahead. We're going to do this in alphabetical order in true Andrew fashion. So like I said, I'm going to honor Andrew as best as I possibly can. I'm going to try to be a little bit better than he is. So again, at the end of this, if you think that I am better than Andrew, you're going to give me a thumbs up emoji, but wait till the end. All right, so we're going to get started. Alphabetical order. I know that D comes before M. I'm not an expert, but David, we're going to have you take it away. Why don't you introduce yourself?
All right, thanks, Kristi. And I'm already going to give you two thumbs up because
Yes.
you're already doing better than Andrew. My name is David Ellin. I'm from Atlanta, Georgia. I am a senior customer success consultant. I help companies design go-to-market strategies, optimize their go-to-market motions, org structure, customer journey maps, playbooks, things like that. I've got over 30 years of experience building and leading customer-facing teams across all sizes of companies, from startups to high-growth companies to Fortune 500 companies. So that's a little bit about me.
Excellent, David. Thank you so much. Melody, why don't you go ahead?
Hi, my name is Melody Gardner. I am from Allentown, Pennsylvania, and I am the Customer Success Manager at Integra One. We are a technology services provider. We have 5 locations in Pennsylvania, and our headquarters is in Allentown, the Lehigh Valley. My background is actually a decade in service delivery, and this is a new role for me, so we are creating a completely new customer success practice, and actually got in on the ground floor and working with some vendors, was lucky enough to actually get the success coaching training. So I'm very, very partial to it. And I'm hoping to learn as much as maybe I can provide.
Excellent. Well, I know, having done the prep work with both of you, that this is going to be a riveting conversation. I'm excited to jump in. So why don't we get started with our first question for today? So as customer success professionals, we know that strong relationships are the foundation of retention, advocacy, and long-term success. But in a world where in-person interactions are becoming less frequent, and we see that all the time now, how do we continue to build trust and loyalty in a way that feels personal, engaging, and valuable to our customers? So Melody, I'm going to pass it over to you.
Sure, absolutely. I think, as we discussed on our pre-call, is the pandemic really chucked us all headlong into having to be adaptable and having to overcome the challenges of not being that in person and trying to understand, okay, how do we navigate this situation? How do we have meaningful human interaction when we can't physically be there? So I think that was something that I think affected us all. And for me personally, I've come to understand that unfortunately, out of sight can mean out of mind. So just as much as we want to keep our clients top of mind, we want, our industry to be top of mind for them. Like, hey, don't forget about them. Don't treat them as a number. Treat them as a human being, and you're going to get a much better result.
Very good. David, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I love that, Melody. And I would add that engaging with customers with the right message and the right people at the right time is really, really important. And this goes for in person also, but it's even more important when you're digital or when you're remote. And when I say message, I refer to message being personalized and customer centric. We want to make sure we're talking to customers about things that are important to them and not important to us. And when you're building trust and credibility, especially in a digital world, you want to make sure that you're always adding value to the customer.
And David, we chatted about this because you know me. I mean, listen, I work for client success, so I love technology that's going to help us scale and be more proficient and efficient. But what do we do when we have a lack of technology to support us, right? We know that there's plenty of teams out there, early stage startups, just teams that are underfunded because that's sadly a thing for us all right now, a reality we're having to navigate. So, what are some ways that we can get creative and offer that personalized experience when we don't have technology to support us?
Yeah, great question. So one of the hacks that I started doing back in the day, and I still do it sometimes today, is I would write an email draft that I'm going to send out to, I don't know, 20, 30, 40 customers. And I take 80% or 90% of that email and it's standard for everybody. But then I want to personalize it, right? I want to go in and I want to have the two where I've got the person's name. I want to go in. Maybe what I'll do is I'll take, if I have 3 or 4 bullets in the email, I'll take one of those bullets and I'll personalize it to some desired outcome that the customer is looking for, some success factor, something I know that's going to resonate with them. And then I'll go to the PS line at the bottom under my signature and I'll personalize that. And when you personalize the name and a bullet and the PS line, maybe it takes 60 or 90 seconds and you send it out. And so what I do is I take my draft, I create like a bunch of copies of it, and I just start going through each one, change the name, change the bullet, change the personalization, the PS, and just start sending them. And in a couple of hours, you can have a personalized touch point with no technology but email sent to a bunch of different customers.
Now, I know this is cheating because Calendly is still technology.
Yeah.
But I mean, like, I'm sure there's tools like that that we can take advantage of, right? And there are free versions of these. And so I would also say, like, yes, in a world where we don't have maybe the technology stack that we desire, there are still tons of point solutions that are available for us to get creative with. And Calendly, I think, is just one great example of a point solution, a tool that's out there that does have a free version that you can take advantage of to easily scale that. So, David, to your point, I love that being able to, like, listen, you don't need a lot, you need a template. You need a framework that works and data that you can ingest into that. And then using something like a Calendly, you can go out there and maybe get those meetings booked at scale.
Yeah, awesome.
All right, very good. Well, listen, we're going to dive into a couple other things here. So, I would love to just talk to you guys a bit about how customer success professionals can adapt their communication styles for virtual interactions, right? Because think about it, when we were in office together or going on onsite, which I feel like is such a foreign concept these days with a remote first world, we don't often get that chance to be in person with our customers. How do you modify your communication style in a virtual world to ensure that you're still kind of landing the same objectives that you would if you were in person?
I can jump in on that one. I would say specifically, meet your client where they're at because not everyone is going to be on all the same products that you are. So it could be as simple as picking up the phone, having a chat. It can be really, you know, getting to the point for them. You want to know why you're reaching out to them because if you just sort of check the box and say, okay, sent the email, or I sent the Teams message, or I sent the XYZ, however you're using it, if it falls flat for the end user, it really doesn't matter. You need to know, take a step back, remember why you're doing it, and then kind of be intentional about that and make sure that it hits the mark when you do send that, and kind of be creative and use everything that you have. Like you were saying earlier, maybe you don't have that whiz bang fancy new technology, but you can have something that can, automate that process and then make it personalized, and then they get exactly what they need.
I love that. One of the things, because Melanie, I think that that is such a great point, meeting them where they are. One of the things that we've found to be really successful, and just want to get your thoughts on this, is in our partnership kickoff meetings, which is initially, it's the first formal conversation we'll have with a new customer coming on board. We actually ask them their preferred methods of communication, and we ask them to stack rank them. And so we, if it's asynchronous and it's a chat, whether it's Teams or Slack or whatever, if it's email, if it's phone, if it's asynchronous video communication, right? We love Loom for that. Do you when in the partnership are you getting that information to figure out what they prefer?
To be honest with you, because we are, our company is 35 years old and we have many, many long-term relationships. So we already have almost an inherent understanding of how people best like to work. So maybe it's a little cheating on my part because I'm stepping into this role not at ground zero, but you get a feel, and having the the background in project management and service delivery, you get the feel of who wants a quick hit versus who wants you to pick up the phone and have that conversation. So I think even if you don't get that right in line with your pre-sales or your sales, over time you can develop that knowledge and understanding of how people really want to be communicated with.
I love that. Yeah, you're sitting on historical gold mine over there that many of us don't have. We don't have those legacy insights to lean on. So you're ahead of the curve for sure. All right,
Very fortunate.
David, what do you think? So how are you adapting your communication style in this new virtual world that we live in?
Yeah, so I would say it depends on the type of conversation I'm going to have. I certainly believe in meeting people where they are, especially if you're on Zoom, right? Some people feel comfortable with having their camera on. Some people don't feel comfortable with having on. If I'm having a one-on-one conversation and they don't feel comfortable having their camera on for some reason, I'm okay with that. But I think we have to know the situation that we're working in. I tend to do a lot of online workshops where I'm engaging with people and we're doing something collaboratively. It doesn't work for them to not have their cameras on or for them to have their microphones off, right? Unless somebody's got a young child and they're taking care of their child, I can understand the microphone being off, maybe the camera. But I think you want to set the expectations up front, but you want to make people feel at ease. If I'm doing a workshop, I want to have their cameras on. I will tell them that. I'll share with them why I want to have their cameras on. People tend to multitask less. They tend to be more participative. So as long as I'm putting them at ease and saying, look, you're not going to embarrass yourself. Everybody's going to have our cameras on. We're all going to be in this together. I tend to think that tends to work well.
So I got a follow-up question to this because this is a highly debated one, like, right, the video on, video off. What do you mandate? What do you make required, not required? If you show up to a meeting and your customer has their camera off and they prefer to keep it off, is your camera on or do you also turn it off?
If I'm having a one-on-one, I may turn it off. If I'm leading a conversation or I'm leading a workshop, even if everyone else's camera's off, my camera's on. I just believe in having that connectivity. I want them to see me. They may not want me to see them. I'll go with it. I don't know,
Yeah.
Melody, how about you?
Melody, what do you think? What's your
I would
opinion?
agree. It kind of is, it's funny because I've had that conversation where, I hop on and I have my camera on and, the end user, the customer says, nope, not today. And I'm like, okay, let's be comfortable then. But I completely agree with the point that if you are leading something, you most definitely need to have your camera on because people are looking to you for that information. Whereas if it's a one-on-one or very small group and everyone's not feeling it, I'm okay, turn it off.
Yeah, I don't have the excuse of keeping my camera off because I'm having a bad hair day. That doesn't work for me.
Okay. All right, I'm gonna give my 2 cents. I'm always gonna leave my camera on. I feel like I always want to feel like even if somebody else doesn't want to show up, that's okay. But I always feel like I need to or want to be the one. I'm usually orchestrated. I usually ask them to come to the meeting. Let's be honest, right? Like I'm the reason why we're here. So I feel like part of me feels a little obligated to show up and always have the camera on. Well, I appreciate you guys answering that off-script question, but highly debated in the side chats that I'm in. So I'm just always curious to hear what other people think. All right, very good. Well, let's get creative here. So we talked about this like idea of meeting people where they are. We talked about the personalization, but now like what role actually does the personalization play in fostering the trust and loyalty in this world, right? How do you see that differentiate itself? Because at the end of the day, right, we're trying to follow the trust equation, which hopefully most of you know from the trusted advisor framework. But to build that trust, we have to be credible, we have to be reliable, but there's also that element of intimacy, right? And so when we think about that, how does personalization play a role?
For me, I would say when you take the time to personalize something, it shows that you are being intentional, you're being organized, you've done your homework, you know the client, and you care enough to know about them specifically and provide value that's going to help them. It's not just a mass blast.
Yeah, I just feel that if when you send a generic message, you're telling somebody that you don't care about them, you don't know about them, you haven't done your homework. And I think when you're trying to build trust, it has to be all about them. And if you're personalizing, you're adding value to them, you're making them feel good about themselves, and you're making them feel like like they matter to you.
All right, so now we're going to flip it on its head because we've all been on the receiving end of a bad digital touch. And I hate the word touch here, but we're going to go with it. You've been on the receiving end of an email that had hi, first name in brackets, right? You've been on the receiving end of an email that completely was not relevant for you at all. How does that impact the partnership, right? When you get it wrong, because we're talking about if we do it right, we have the ability to build trust, to build loyalty, to build credibility. But what happens when you get it wrong? What's the impact?
It just really, it gives you the ick. You look at it and you go, ew, delete. They didn't care enough. And not only is it, okay, I'm not interested, but then you're like, and then you're really not interested. It's just that intangible level of like, I'm not even dealing with that anymore. And it's unfortunate because that could be a completely innocuous mistake, and it could cost that relationship, or it could cost, you know, future relationship interactions, and somebody might not even know it.
Right. It's almost,
Yeah.
it feels so harmless, but then all of a sudden you realize how harmful it was. All right, David, what are your thoughts on this? What
So
happens when we get
I
it
feel
wrong?
I feel the same way. It's kind of like fingernails on a chalkboard for me. And depending upon what kind of day I'm having, I may react differently. So sometimes I might just let it go. But the educator in me says, you know what, you ought to let them know the mistake they made, and maybe they'll stop making it for other people. So sometimes I will shoot an email back pointing out the things that they could have done to make me feel better, especially if they're trying to get me to be a prospect of their product or service or whatever it is. Um, I got one the other day that said, as a successful human resources executive, right? And I was having a good day, so I felt charitable, and I said, I just sent an email back and I said, just curious as to what makes you think I'm a human resources executive. And I left it at that. I'll see if I get a response back, but it just lets them know that they're targeting the wrong people and they're turning people off.
Well, if that's the message you're getting, I'm confident there's not anyone on the back end of that going to read your note, but
Yeah, probably
the
not.
effort was there. The effort was there.
Yeah.
All right. So I don't know about you guys, but I really miss the days of on-site meetings. I feel like I used to look forward to going, getting all dressed up, heading over to a customer's office, bringing food, preparing my deck, having this big meeting with lots of people in a boardroom. And like that just doesn't exist anymore, right? And I'm listen, there's certain industries, absolutely. I know I hear from folks on Wall Street that finance is back in the office. But for a lot of us not in those industries where we do have the luxury of being remote first, how do we maintain that strong relationship when we don't have the ability to be in person?
I can start with this one. So one of the out of the box approaches I take is I try to learn something about an individual. You know, when you go to an on-site meeting, um, you get the opportunity to kind of kibitz at the beginning, and you get to have some small talk while the group is getting together. You learn something about people. When you're virtual, you don't really have that opportunity. And Melody, you've talked before about being intentional and doing things intentionally. So one of the intentional things I do is I do some research about the key stakeholders that I'm engaging with. And if I find something unique or something interesting with them, I will specifically try to set up a virtual conversation with that person and talk about it just to be able to build relationship because I can't do that in person. So the example I gave, you know, during our early chat was I have a prospect or I have a key stakeholder that took a year off from work and she did the Peace Corps. And I was just fascinated about that. And I just reached out to her. I didn't have a relationship with her at the time. And I said, "Hey, I just saw this in your background. Can we get on a Zoom call for 15 minutes? I'd love to hear about your experience." And what that did was it created that personal connection that I would normally try to get if I were on site at their offices, but I lost the ability to do. So that's just something that works for me.
I
Right.
love that. Such a creative idea that you really leaned into, David. That's awesome. Melody, what are your thoughts on that?
I 100% agree with that because that is really preserving the human element in those relationships. You really can't have a relationship without it. Otherwise, it's just very transactional. So I think that's fantastic. And I agree also with, providing value and being proactive about it. Don't wait until you're late to the party when they're screaming for information or they want an update or they just want to hear from you. Be proactive. Let them know that you're going to be there and that you're going to be there ahead of time. And it's something that they will come to rely upon, and it just fosters those bonds a little bit better.
I love that. Okay, so I would be remiss if I didn't throw in a couple other ideas here because this one was one that I really struggled with a lot because I loved in-person meetings so much. So I'm a big fan of like recreation, right? What can I do to recreate the same experience to the extent that I can virtually? So a few things we did to get really creative. If we were doing workshops, or if we were doing trainings or larger meetings, we would actually proactively send out DoorDash or Uber Eat gift cards in advance because we'd say, you know what? If we were together in an office, we'd be having lunch together. So lunch is on us. Pick what you'd like. We would still do icebreakers if we're doing workshops, if we're doing trainings with end users, right? Maybe it's not just a room of just executives where maybe we didn't do that. But if we're trying to get to know the people that are in the room, we would still invest time in like getting to know you activities, right? And so carving out 15 minutes at the beginning to spend that time. We would try to make things as interactive as possible. Try to have a little bit of that small talk. I'll tell you one little trick that I do, and it works for the people who joined us in the webinar today who joined early. I hop onto meetings 15 minutes early. Now I'll tell you, as somebody who's notoriously running over in meetings, that's not always possible. But when I have the chance, being 15 minutes early, if somebody else is there early before the meeting starts, ooh, that little private kind of few minutes you get before the meeting starts, gold, right? Don't talk about the weather, talk about anything but the weather. That's my big piece of advice there. Anything is more interesting, but you can really get to know somebody in those moments too. So if you're struggling to really think about creative ways to build these relationships, get creative, right? Like you're only limited by your creativity and your thoughts here. And so for me, a big thing is like, what would I do if I was in person? I'm going to do all of those same things, but I'm going to do them in the comfort of my sweatpants and my socks.
Love that. Absolutely love it. Yeah.
All right, very good. So now we're going to chat about really kind of like the human connection here. So we know that customer success teams, we use technology, right? And so we talked about this. Yes, we know that not everybody has the tech stack that they so desire. Christmas is right around the corner in 12 months, so just put it on your wish list. But for teams, obviously, we use technology, right? And we're trying to enhance engagement. Everyone is trying to scale something. Everyone is trying to figure out AI. How do you use technology? How do we embrace it in a way that still allows us to maintain human touch?
I would say use the technology to strip away the more manual-matic administrative functions from your workload and make you more effective and impactful as a human being. Because if you take something that will maybe take notes for you so you can really hone in on a conversation, it really frees up your mental bandwidth to be present in that conversation. Or for me specifically, I can tell you, we utilize HubSpot for emails. And what's great about that is all the information is there, and I can concentrate on the messaging and the segmentation and getting the right message to the right people, like David said earlier, at the right time without having to do the manual scraping. It's done for me. It's, you know, it's kind of like hands me on a silver platter. Here you go. And now you can personalize it and reach out, and a one-to-many looks like a one-to-one. So you're getting that click-through rate, or you're getting that high open rate, or you're getting that engagement because you don't have to worry about it. It's done for you.
I love that. I think, listen, I am not somebody, I don't love to always feel like I'm being recorded. I don't, as we're live and being recorded right now. But there is so much value in that, right? Because I do love the idea of, listen, I'm a big note taker. I will take copious notes when I'm in a meeting, but I'm not as present as I want to be because I'm trying to capture everything, right? I want to make sure I didn't miss anything. I've captured things accurately, the sentiment, all of that. And I think that there is something beautiful about being able to just be present and engaged and understand that, the admin work is happening behind the scenes. I'm here for this dialogue. And I think being able to show up that way and really show people through body language, because I think that's also something that's big, even in virtual worlds, but being able to be present and engaged and really have a dialogue. Because when you're just taking notes, you're literally just listening, right? Like a court reporter. And so it definitely takes that away, which is really nice. All right, David,
Yeah,
you're in the hot seat. What do you got for me?
yeah, there are two new tech tools that have come on the market, and I guess in the last year or so, that I've recently just gotten exposed to, that I think add a lot of value to getting insights, but then being more personal and more human with your customers. One is called Sturdy AI. It's an application that connects to every customer communication tool you have. So whether it's your voice of the customer program, or whether it's your your emails or your phone calls, it takes all of that and it gives you insights on conversations that you might be overlooking, or things that customers say in their own words that you might be overlooking. And it takes that information, it generates insights and CTAs that enable human touch around something that's important to the customer. And we talked about having the right message and making sure you're adding value to the customer. So making sure that you're talking to them about things that are important to them allows you to surface a deeper, meaningful conversation, and Sturdy helps you do that. The second one is something called DIVACS, and it's spelled DIVACS. And it's a platform that enables you to create value drivers for your customers, share those value drivers and the measurements against those value drivers with your customer in a platform that you're both sharing. And it promotes conversations about those topical areas for both you and the customer, and keeps value in front of the customer, which is always important in a human interaction.
I love that. It's so funny. I had heard of Sturdy, but I hadn't heard of the other one. So I'm always on the market for like cool tools that are making my life better. Okay, so now I have to ask you guys a quick question. What role does data play in this? I know this is not part of our pre-scripted questions, but like we talked about personalization, we talk about using technology. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, you cannot do any of these things without having the right inputs. So, what role do you believe that data plays in all of this? Our ability to build and foster, I don't want to say like artificial relationships, because that's not what it is, but in this virtual world, what role is data playing?
To me, I think data is the backstop of the conversation. It's the whole point of why we're reaching out in the first place, and it shapes really the direction. It kind of, for me, an example would be, we participate in vendor programs that provide us with usage metrics, and kind of take a look into the client environment and say, hey, based off of the solution that they purchased, this is what they're leveraging. And, it gives us insights that we can then surface those and reach out to the client and provide them and say, hey, this is what we're seeing, and it gives us the little nudge or the little impetus to reach out to them and provide them with information that could be useful to them, but it's also useful to us as their provider because we see how they're using or what they're using, and it gives us an idea of, okay, the next conversation. So it's just that little window of insight that's helpful to them and to us.
I love that. David, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I'm going to go on the assumption that we're all agreeing that our data is accurate because so
No,
many
no one's
companies have
agreeing that.
inaccurate.
David,
Okay.
have you ever, listen, one of my favorite questions, and I'm gonna be a little passionate about this. My favorite question to ask, and I speak at any event, is who here trusts the data that they have? And nobody raises their
Secret
hand.
ballot.
Nobody raises their
Right.
Nobody
hand.
does.
Trust
Right?
but
So
verify.
like,
Trust but verify.
right. So it's so crazy, right? We talk about the importance of data. Like we literally couldn't be doing any of the things that you guys are so brilliantly outlining for us today if we didn't have good, accurate, clean current data. But yet, if you
Yeah.
ask anybody, how do you feel about your data? Everyone's like, more on the
Yeah. And the whole reason I started with data accuracy is because if you know your data isn't accurate and you don't have any confidence in it, you shouldn't be using it to drive customer conversations because the customer is going to know that their data, what their data says. And if your data shows something different than theirs, you could lose credibility and ultimately erode trust. So, with that said, I would say most of us think about using our data to talk to the customer about something specific about them. One of the out of the box ideas I want to bring to the table is take data that's not specific to the customer, but that might be specific to the industry and share things like industry trends. Bring something of value to the customer that they can't see in their own systems. They can see their data. They don't want me to sit in front of them and just regurgitate their data back to them. Oh, here's what your usage metrics were over the last 30 days. They could see that, but tell me something. Use the data to tell me something important that's going on in the industry. Give me a trend. Give me a best practice. Tell the customer something they don't know. That's sort of an out of the box way to use data, and I love doing it.
I love that so much. And so I'll just emphasize for everybody on the call here. I think we're universally in agreement that data is important. I don't see anybody in the chat saying that I'm a crazy person, or at least unrelated to this. Data is important. I'm just going to encourage you all, if data hygiene is not on your 2025 bingo card, it needs to be. Because everything that we are going to do as we move into the future is going to require good data hygiene. So if you don't have a governance program around it, which I'm guaranteeing like maybe 1% of you do, if that's a gift. But the rest of us who don't, we need to get that in order because all of the great innovation that everyone's pushing for AI and automation and all these things, it can only work if your data is good. And so I just wanted to call that out because every idea that you guys are giving today is brilliant, but it only is brilliant if we have the right inputs feeding it. All right, we're going to shift gears.
100% agree with that.
Right, good.
Yeah.
I love being validated, Melody. I'm a words of affirmation girly, so I love it when somebody tells me that I'm right. Okay, we're gonna shift gears to onboarding. I think something else we probably all agree to here is that onboarding is super important for our customers, and we have seen a huge shift to companies trying to virtually onboard their customers. And so when we think about this type of programming, what are some of the key elements that we believe are going to help make sure that this virtual onboarding experience is effective?
So I have a little bit of a different take on that, and it has come to my attention through working on these vendor programs that we're a little bit different in our business setup when it comes to onboarding and getting people up to speed because we are a technology services provider, so we have multi-disciplines, and it's not just one single, say, software as a service, which is a little bit different than a lot of the customer success information that I've taken on. So for us, we have dedicated project managers and dedicated professional service engineers that are working on that implementation, and they're guiding that, shepherding that along the entire way. But what's very important is that first outreach, because we have pre-sales and then we have sales and then we have that service delivery team that works together. And it's the constant outreach and the just speaking with the client, making them comfortable with the process, and then working with them throughout the life cycle of the delivery implementation, and then the support afterwards. So I think that it's the early contact often makes sure that everyone feels good about it. That's a little bit different for us, but it kind of translates across the process.
Very good, Melanie. Thank you so much. Dave, what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah. So my thought is, the customer journey is comprised of a whole bunch of different touch points all throughout the customer journey. But there are only a few that you really need to hit a home run. Onboarding is one of them, right? Business reviews might be another one, but onboarding is one of them. And if your digital onboarding program doesn't get the customer successfully to achieve first value, you're in trouble from the start. So my feeling is the first key element of building a really good, well-designed digital onboarding path is to go through the process yourself as if you were a customer and make sure the process is not only giving you value, but it's taking you through the process in a logical step and it actually works. Nothing is more frustrating than you're following a set of instructions in an onboarding plan and you get to a step where it says, all right, once you do this task, press the green button, and there ain't no green button on your screen and you're stuck. You are 10 feet under when you do that. So take the time to go through your own onboarding program after you build it and make sure it's doing the things you want to do, it works properly, and it's delivering value.
All right, I got to ask a follow-up to this. I don't love an entirely virtual onboarding experience because I need to talk to somebody. I'm likely going to have questions. I need help. I am not as smart as I look. And so what are your thoughts on having this model where it is maybe virtual first, but has a human element to it? How do you think about approaching that kind of a model?
I, I'll just start there because I'm really passionate about this, and I had an issue with this about a year ago. I love it. Whether you have a pooled onboarding team or a pooled CSM team, somebody has to be behind the scenes in case somebody gets stuck. Um, about a year ago, I was serving on the board of a startup SaaS company, and one of the roles they asked me to do is to go find their first CRM and their first support ticketing system. And so I went and did that. I picked a platform. Because we were small and we were a startup, we were put into a totally digital onboarding solution. We got stuck along the way. And look, I'm not the smartest tool in the shed, but I think I know how to follow directions. But the directions didn't work and I got stuck. And I literally couldn't get past the step to get to the point where I could activate the software.
Mm.
And there was nobody to reach out. I went online and I looked for a customer service phone number. There was nothing. There was no customer portal out there, and I was literally stuck. I happened to be lucky because I knew the chief customer officer for the company, and I picked up the phone and just called her cell phone and gave her a piece of my mind. But most people can't do that, and when that happens, you'll literally just go find another company, right? Because there's nobody to talk to. So I'm with you, Kristi. I think there has to be some human behind the technology.
I even think we can get creative, right? Like you don't even need to have an actual person where you're getting on a Zoom meeting or getting on a, I don't, Google Meet or whatever else, I don't know, Teams, I guess. Okay. So you don't even need that. I had an onboarding experience where it was virtual first onboarding. And I did get stuck, but not because I got stuck. I got distracted is actually what I should say. And I stopped, right? So like I kind of just like, whoop, shiny red object, went over here, started doing my job. I didn't have time to pay attention to this. And a virtual agent reached out to me and was like, hey, Kristi, did you get stuck? Is something wrong? Is something not clear? How can I help you? I want to make like, and literally started engaging because I didn't continue to advance through the process. And I thought, Wow. Okay. Like I felt good. Like it was somebody, they knew who I was. They knew that I was no longer following the program as intended and as designed. And they had somebody proactively engage me to figure out what was wrong, right? Did I stop because I got distracted, or did I stop because I didn't figure it out, or I didn't like it, or what was going on and how can they help me? And so I think that there is all these creative ways, and it could be people and it could be technology. But David, I think the important point is that we can't leave them alone. We
Right.
need you need to guide them. If you're not doing it one to one, that's okay. You can do it one to many. You can do it through technology, but you can't leave them to their own devices and expect the same outcome.
Not if you care about them. And, some
Right.
companies don't, but yeah, agree.
Okay, very good. All right. So we can all agree there that there's got to be something, some kind of guide, some human element. I've seen some really cool customers. I will tell you, I'm notorious for personally purchasing technology, cheap technology, because I'm not made of millions, just to go through their onboarding because I kind of want to see like, oh, how do they do it? How would they onboard me when I have $1 invested? And I'll tell you, some companies are really crushing it. And I won't name names, but like some people are really getting it right. Okay, so let's talk about measurement because we all know you can't manage what you can't measure. So we're trying to assess, are we really building the relationships that we think we are? Because I feel like there's this perceived notion of like, yeah, we're killing it. We're out there. We talk to Bobby all the time. He's best friend. And we don't actually know. So how do you guys think about measuring the strength of customer relationships in this remote or digital first environment? What are the different points of measurement that we can actually wrap around so we can say, yes, we're doing this well, or no, we're not? David, you want to take us away?
Yeah, I'll go ahead. So one of the things that I always recommend is to use surveys to collect sentiment, especially in a digital first environment, right? Whether it's in-app surveys that you can pop up or surveys that are sent out of an email. That's one way to do it. Another way to do it is to monitor if you have a community that's out there, monitor the community, look for sentiment that's going on, try to figure out, what people are saying about it. The one thing I wouldn't do is I wouldn't take things like license utilization or logins and assume if somebody's logging into your application every day that you've got a great relationship with them because that doesn't translate at all. So be careful about what you're measuring, but there's lots of different ways to go about having those measurements done.
Absolutely. I would definitely agree with you, right? Product adoption has nothing to do with the relationship. I use
Right.
tons of things. I don't even know anybody at the company, right? So this is just me using your product. I don't have a relationship with you. I have a use for your technology, and that's it. That's where it kind of stops. That's a great
Yeah.
point. Melody, what are your thoughts on here? How are you measuring the impact and effectiveness of the relationships that you're building?
Right. To build on what you have both just called out, renewals are not it. Because if someone is beholden to the technology, they're going to renew it. It's more about growth. Maybe they give you more varied opportunities. It's not just the every year, yes, okay, yes. It's something new, it's something different. Hey, build something new in our environment, help us expand, help us refresh. And it's something where you're getting really deeper into, excuse me, the conversation of who that customer is, what they're trying to accomplish, what their long-term goals are, and it's the depth and breadth instead of just the renewal and the metrics. And the other thing that I would say is it's not just engagement. Like you said, you could be out there in their face talking to them. It's the depth of engagement. It's the type of engagement. Because if they're willing to reach out to you when something is wrong, when they're upset with you, when something's broken, and they give you the opportunity to fix it, that's great because they're not just going like, oh, okay, whatever. And then the next time comes around and they just, kind of ride off into the sunset with some other provider. They're giving you the opportunity to make it better and to strengthen that relationship. And I would say, that's qualitative, but really it's an indicator of they're coming to you saying, hey, I got a problem. They're giving you the opportunity to fix it. And that's really valuable, I think.
Melody, I think you're spot on. One of the things that I've told people is like, I would rather get a 0 or a 1 on an NPS score than no score at all, right? Because at least you're telling me something. At least you care. At least you're engaged. And
Right.
at
And then
least
you,
you're giving me an opportunity to do something about it. The ones that
exactly.
aren't filling out anything, they're giving you nothing, those are your red flags. And
Yeah,
the
when you
sad
get
part
the
is,
crickets, that's a bad
right.
day.
And this is
Yeah.
why I struggle with surveys at times because we over index on the score, celebrating this number. But I'm like, whoa, whoa, whoa. That's
What
not
are we
even a
actually finding
scientifically
out?
relevant sample size. When you have less than 20% of your customers responding and you want
Right.
to go and cheerlead and put that number on a huge slide, you're getting it wrong. You're telling the wrong story. Now,
Right.
if
You're
you
looking
told
at the
me
wrong
80% of
numbers.
your customers are applying, I'd say go get that. Go get your pom-poms. Now you're ready. Okay, very good, guys. Okay,
Yeah.
so we're gonna keep it moving. I am watching the clock. I am watching the questions. So just a reminder, guys, if you have questions for us, we're gonna be shifting over to there momentarily. Please head over the Q&A at the bottom of your Zoom bar, a little QA, little emoji icon thing. Drop your questions in there. Go in there, check them out, upvote as we go. We'll probably get to one or two more questions, and then I will hop on over to there. So let's get that filled in over there. Okay. We are gonna shift gears again, and we're going to talk about best practices because I think everyone here is looking for some takeaways. So we're going to give you some things you can go right now, today, tomorrow, and go to implement. So David, Melanie, when you guys think about best practices, how can teams proactively address the potential trust gaps when we think about these virtual interactions? What are the things that we can do proactively to get ahead of this?
I'd say, kind of circling back to where we first started, do your homework. Know your clients. Understand not only what they've purchased, why have they purchased it? What are they using it for? What are their goals? What is the ultimate iteration of what they've done? Because then it's less a conversation transactionally about, oh, are you going to renew? It's how's that working for you? How are you feeling about it? How has that actually improved your environment? And then you get the feeling of, do they like it? Do they not like it? And then they know that you actually care about how they're doing with it, not just what they bought.
Now, Melody, you did have in your notes something that I do have to call out because I did see someone's LinkedIn post about this today. And they
Okay.
talked about having a customer issue. And what they did is they picked up
Picked
the
up the phone.
phone.
Oh, yeah.
Gosh, and it seems like that is the last resort. People would rather try to solve something asynchronously for hours, days on end before just picking up the phone to
Absolutely.
really address and kind of like manage the temperament there. So, what are your thoughts there? Because you did put it in, and I want to call it out because I do think we need to rally around telephone again. I know nobody wants to. We don't have cords on them anymore, guys. So, like, we are now, we're mobile with them. It's crazy. Technology is cutting edge. Melody, talk to me about that.
Okay. So for me personally, in customer success, I feel it's very much an intersectional position. You're not sales, you're not accounting, you're not marketing, you're not support necessarily, but you need to know a little bit about it and you need to be able to reach out to those people as resources within your organization, leverage that information, and then fill in the gaps and then reach out to the client with something that is purposeful. Because that way, again, it goes back to the knowing that you care, but like taking the time to just cut through the fluff, pick up the phone and say, hey, Mr. Account Manager or Mrs. Account Manager, tell me about this because this doesn't look right to me. I want to reach out to the client, but I want to be informed first. And then, armed with that information, you can reach out directly to the client and maybe resolve an issue they don't even know that they have, or give them some information proactively and make them, have a stronger footing for what they want to accomplish. And it really,
I
like
love
you
that,
said,
Melanie.
people do email to death, I think.
I
Yeah.
can't. I'm like, if there's more than two exchanges on something that feels sensitive, I'm like, just pick up the phone, please.
Right.
Just get ahead of it, and then you can go back to email. But you just have a little intervention on a call. It does wonders. All right, David, what are your thoughts on this? We are working towards best practices, helping our teams proactively address potential trust gaps.
Yeah, so over the course of my career, I've made a ton of mistakes. And one of the things that I learned is that when you make a mistake and you don't live up to it, it erodes trust. So one of the things I've learned is to be vulnerable, right? Get in front of the customer and say, look, I screwed something up, or I noticed that something didn't go well, and I'd like to get your feedback. I want to tell you what happened. Maybe apologize for, let's say I made a change. The company made a change to their application, And we didn't share that with them beforehand. We didn't tell them we were going to do it. We did it and it didn't work. And now they're stuck, right? They can't use the application. Let's own up to that. Let's share with them, look, we made a mistake. We should have done this. If you make a mistake and you own up to it, it tends to build trust and credibility. Hiding behind a mistake erodes it. So I would just say, don't hesitate to be vulnerable. It's hard to do, but it'll pay off in spades.
I love that. All right, guys, I'm going to bring us to our final question before we switch gears and head over to the Q&A. So just a reminder for everyone who is still on here, head over to the Q&A. We're going to be shifting over there momentarily. We're going to do one more question for David and Melody. Please get your questions over there. Go ahead, upvote, so that way we can prioritize based on what you want to hear us tackle. So we're going to end today and we're going to talk about transparency because I think this is huge. So when we think about this, I think it's key to relationships is being transparent, being accountable. And David, you kind of just hit on this, so I think it's a great way to segue in. What are the steps that we can take to maintain that level of transparency and accountability when we have a virtual relationship?
I agree.
Yeah, so
Oh, go ahead,
go
David.
ahead, go ahead, Melody.
I was just going to say, I completely agree with what David said. When you make a mistake or when you figure out that something has gone wrong or not as intended, call it out, own it right away, because then the customer knows that you are 100% transparent. You're going to be accountable for any mistakes. I can give a brief example of when I started in this position a few years ago, and I was very deeply in the weeds of trying to understand the data that was coming from the manufacturer. And I saw something and it just didn't feel right because I knew the customer and I looked at it and I went, I don't like that. So I did a little digging and found out that we had made a mistake, and they basically, they purchased more than they needed to. And that was, part and parcel of, like you said, people make changes and don't tell you. Well, manufacturers do that. Surprise, surprise. So we had made a mistake based upon the lack of information, reached out to the client and made it work for them. And we were very upfront with it, and they really, really appreciated it. So instead of it being like, oh, this is not good, it turned into no, this is really good, because they know we're going to honor our work with them and our promises to them. So that's like, you got to sometimes put your cards on the table.
I love it, Melody. And listen, as somebody I've been a customer leader for a long time, I will say some of the strongest relationships I've had have come out of these tough conversations, out of these tough situations, right? A crisis is a great opportunity for you to develop a strong relationship with somebody, right? Because how you handle it. So I think you gave some great examples there on how we can kind of navigate that. One other thing that I love that I see some companies do is, my favorite is when support teams are proactively sharing bugs with folks and saying like, oh, found this issue. Oh, this isn't working. The last thing I want to have to do is dissect your product. I'm sitting here thinking it's user error half the time, that I just don't know how to use something. In the meantime, it's a bug. So I will say, for those of you running support teams who are out there just proactively getting ahead of it, I commend you. Thank you so much for making me feel validated in my intelligence. All right, David.
You are brilliant, Kristi. Brilliant.
Melody, you are feeding my words of affirmation. I can't tell you, you are a gift. You are a gift for me. All right, David, you're gonna take it away. So talk to me about how are we maintaining transparency and accountability to maintain these virtual customer relationships?
Yeah, one of the things I like to recommend is to have CSMs talk to their customers about how you're going to engage with them. You're not going to necessarily do that with your long tail. Your long tail, you're just going to start digitally engaging with them. We've already talked about the fact that you're going to have a human there somewhere in the background if they need it. But if you think about mid-market enterprise strategic accounts, talk to them about how you're going to engage with them. Let them know that not everything is going to be one-on-one or in-person communication. And the way to do it is to tell them how much you value their schedule and their time and all the things that they have going on and how busy they are. So let them know and say, look, there are going to be times that we have a best practice we want to share with you. We don't need to take your time and get on a phone and have a 30-minute conversation about it. If it's okay with you, we're going to put a pop-up in the application. When you do something, we're going to say, hey, the companies that are most successful with our platform also do this. You might want to try this. It's a way to keep you engaged. It's a way to share a best practice with you without taking a lot of time up, because we respect your calendar and we respect your time. And if they don't want to do that, give them the opportunity to say, you know what, I'd really prefer to have the conversation. Most of the time, what you're going to get is thank you for being upfront and transparent with me. I love the fact that you're going to do that and you respect my calendar. I really appreciate it.
Oh my gosh, something to be said for setting proper expectations, David, right?
Yeah.
Crazy. A foreign concept for those of you who are not doing it. Please go out there and set the right expectations. Okay, guys, we do, just so you know, we do have a little bit more time. So I know that it appears as if we may only have 5 minutes, but I promise you we've got 20. So we do run until 1/4 past. So we are going to be together for 20 more minutes, which means we've got plenty of time to answer your questions. Those of you who have not head over to the Q&A, I'm going to ask that you do because we've got 2 experts on the line. I will not include myself in that, but I will try to help if there's something I can answer. But we've got 2 experts here that are going to help you figure out how do we navigate building and developing and nurturing relationships with our customers in a virtual first world. So if you've got a question, please hop over there and let's get it answered for you. Now, I am going to start with Andrew Mark's question just because he has joined us. He has joined us virtually, and I want to honor our previous host because I'm pretty sure I've dethroned him, but I'm going to need you all to help validate this. So Andrew's question today was, how much better is Kristi at this than I am? And then that was from Andrew. So I'm going to need you to go ahead and just go to the chat and drop any emoji. Any emoji will do. Give me an emoji. If you think that I am better than Andrew, just go ahead. Again, I'm a words of affirmation person. I need the validation. Make me feel better. I sleep better at night. Thank you. Thank you. I'll take 2. That's fine. If you guys want to keep coming though, guys, I need it. Help me out here. All right. Don't worry. I'm not getting paid for this. Thank you all. I appreciate it. Andrew, I hope that you are actively watching and engaging in the chat right now. I've got all kinds of emojis. I've got star eyes. I've got horn blowing. I've got clapping. I've got a mustache, which I hope that's not indicative of anything. Fish. Okay, very good. So Andrew, I hope that goes ahead and answers your question. I did the best that I could. I don't believe that I really filled your shoes, but I tried. I tried. I'll give you that. Okay, guys, so we are going to move over to Q&A. We've got some questions in there. Again, please go ahead, drop them in here. We do prioritize those that have been upvoted the most. So even though I did cheat and start with Andrew's question, which was just shy of being the first one, I appreciate you all letting me cheat while I gave you a moment to go think of questions to ask. Okay, so we're going to start with our first question. So Melanie and David, first question that we've got here that has been upvoted. Any recommendations on how to engage customers who are not responding to Tech Touch when we don't have the bandwidth to call individually?
For me, that really, it kind of evokes the same thing I touched on earlier. Now, we use HubSpot. So I basically, starting from scratch, coming up with, excuse me, contact lists and the old-fashioned way, but then able to segment that and kind of send out, public service announcements where it makes sense to those people who really would care about that message. And maybe that would be considered tech touch. But again, if you're looking at segmentation, maybe you want to look at tier. Who are your top tier clients? The ones that are really your heavy hitters, that it's going to matter the most that you get a hold of them, that you give them that value, and that you provide them something that they're going to remember. Because maybe you can't get everyone because there's only one of you, like there's only one of me. And you want to make sure that it's impactful. So you're doing it with purpose. You're doing it so that you get the ROI on that effort. And that's how I would approach that.
I love that. David, what are your thoughts here?
I'm going to be a little provocative here, and I'm going to maybe shake it up a little bit. And I'm going to say, if we want them as a customer, we can't just use an excuse that says we don't have time to call them. If it's important enough that we feel like they need to engage with us, then it's important enough that we engage with them in the way that they want to engage. And if they've proven to us that Tech Touch isn't for them, we need to find the time to pick up the phone and make a phone call.
I don't hate that answer. I don't.
Yeah.
And I can tell you, like, I think that I don't hate it at all. I think I wanted to hate it, but I don't. One of the things that I think people are lost on is the right messaging, right? So I will tell you, we have introduced some creative messaging at times. For example, We have sent notes. We would go and find out who the CFO is and send notes and say, you're losing on your investment, like just really provocative subject lines, because all of a sudden the CFO is like, wait, I'm spending money on something and we're not using it. Huh? And so all of a sudden somebody's peeking in to figure out what's going on there. We have used other mediums. Guys, email is not the only channel, right? Get creative. So yes, if it's not the phone, but I'll tell you that there's other ways. We love social media. Now, I'm not telling you that I'm going to go find my customer on Facebook or Instagram or TikTok. No, 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 no. But I will use LinkedIn because it's appropriate. And so if there is somebody that I'm not hearing from an email, sometimes I'll hop over to LinkedIn and say, hey, I haven't heard from you. Is everything okay? And I'm not going to go the message of I have a need, I have an ask. I'm going human to human and I'm asking you, are you okay? Are you still there? Right? Like, because especially in this time where we're just uncertain of are our contacts even there any longer. Going to the last point I would add to that is validate your contacts. Are we even reaching out to the right people?
Right.
I would add, just since you threw out a creative one, I'm going to throw out the most creative one that I've ever done. Now, this was not for a long tail. This was not for a tech touch. This was for a higher level customer. But I had a customer that I couldn't get to engage with me, and I FedExed them a shoe, not a pair of shoes, a shoe. I got their address. I sent them a shoe, and I put a note in there, and I said, now that I have one foot in the door, can we maybe have a conversation? And I'm telling you, I got a great response and it kicked off a great conversation. And then I translated it into a virtual ongoing engagement, but I had to do something to get in the door and it worked really well.
David, I absolutely love that. I have to rain on your parade a little bit. Where are you getting these folks' home addresses? Because in a remote first world, I can't send it to an office anymore.
No, you can't.
Well, so now we're in a pickle. Now I have two shoes at home that don't fit me.
In all honesty, this was before the virtual world. But you just look, you have to be resourceful in trying to find people's
I love it.
Addresses.
The creativity there, that is chef's kiss, top tier. All right, guys, we're going to move to our next question, which has been upvoted. Again, please drop questions in here. We'll get to as many as we can. Next one, customer communication isn't a one size fits all. Different people digest information in different ways. Have you found it helpful to create customer avatars or personas to better tailor your communication and engagement strategies? If so, how do you leverage them to ensure you're speaking in a way that truly resonates with each customer?
Okay. I think it's important to know who you're talking to. I mean, that really is the core of that question. I feel that if you have a technical audience, you can kind of get in the weeds a little bit and they love that. If you don't have a technical audience, they're going to be very irritated with you very quickly. So you have to know, again, do a little research, do a little homework, know who you're speaking with, because you're going to have multiple contacts at the same company and they have completely different perspective and completely different objective. So help them all, but help yourself first by knowing who you're chatting with first.
Melanie, I have to over-index on that one. That is such a very huge call out. I will tell you, one of the companies I worked for, my customers were over-the-road truck drivers, okay? Mm-hmm. Guess where they were not sitting? At a desk in front of a computer checking their email.
Right.
So you know what we did? We moved, instead of doubling down and trying to get email technology, we got technology that allowed us to text message because they did have their phones. And so we found that the easy way to engage was short, succinct messages, not long, lengthy text, short, quick, little messages at the appropriate times. And so like we really dialed in on what was the right time, what was the right length of the message, what was the call to action, right? And so, but to your point, you have to know who you're communicating with, because the method as well as the message will have to be altered in order to really get the objective across.
Yep, absolutely.
David, what do you think?
Yeah, I'm a big fan of personas, and I do something called conversation cards, where I will take the key personas at a client and I will build these conversation cards where they're geared specifically towards the persona. Like I typically know what's important to the head of marketing. I typically know what's important to an admin, a system administrator. I typically know what's important to somebody that might be in RevOps, right? And I want to talk to them in their language. Because it fosters the relationship a little bit better. And it allows me to give them value where I'm not confusing what I'm giving them with something that somebody else could benefit from, but they could care less about.
Yeah. Okay, guys, we're going to keep it rolling because we still got 15 minutes left. Okay, so we've got 10 minutes left, guys, because I don't know how to do math. Okay. This is where Andrew probably is better than me. It's the math thing. It gets me every time. Okay. Next question up. What recommendations do you have to build relationships with your coworkers, equal and across departments when you're remote? So we're still talking about virtual relationships. Now they're just internal.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
exactly the same thing, I think. I think you have to respect their area of expertise and reach out to them and know that you can rely upon them because they are going to know certain things that you're just not going to know or have access to. And I think it fosters good relationships when you can be cognizant of that and not fall into the trap of, the ego-based, I have to do everything because I'm customer success. Because I feel like some personalities lend themselves to that. And then you get overburdened and overwhelmed and you don't really, you don't get done what you want to get done. But when you can look to the left and look to the right and go, okay, this person's an expert here, this person's an expert here, understand what impact that has on the information that you're trying to convey to your end user and leverage that and really build those relationships and kind of work across the aisle, as it were. And when you do that, the only caveat is understand that some positions lend themselves to certain personalities, and that's just something to be aware of because you have to be able to roll with that. Because if they had a different personality, they wouldn't be great at their job and they wouldn't be able to give you the information that you needed to do your job. And so I think it's just being aware of what's available to you and then leveraging it.
I love it, Melody. David, how do you go ahead? How do you make friends, David? Tell me.
Yeah, I'm going to go back to the answer that I gave earlier about the customer with the Peace Corps. Not only can you do that for a customer, why can't you do it for your coworkers? Go to their LinkedIn profile, find out something interesting about them, reach out to them for a conversation, get to know something. You don't have to know their whole life story, but get to know something personally that gives you a connection with them. Um, you're in the same company. Why not do it? Why just do it for a customer? Why not do it for a coworker?
I love that. And David, that example will forever be one of my favorite. I don't know, maybe the shoe one is better, but definitely a top one though. Okay. So something else, just I want to give 2 cents here on this one also. I mean, relationships are all about being personal. One of the things that we do here at Client Success, we've done it at other companies, is like we'll have Slack channels that is like literally just a random question asked every day, and people just go and answer it in the thread. And it's things that will be interesting, right? Like I don't want to say it's as basic as like what's your favorite movie, but like something where everyone can participate and answer, and it's not too personal, where it feels like you're crossing any lines or boundaries, but it gives you a little insight into who the person is and what they like and how they use their free time. And I think you can use things like that to start to build on relationships, right? You find something you learn. Great. How do you play on that in a private conversation? So there's a whole bunch of different creative ways. I'm also a big advocate of like, listen, not every time you talk to somebody does it need to be a business meeting. Right? Remember when
Yeah.
we would just like walk over to someone's desk or say, hey, do you want to go walk to the kitchen and grab a cup of coffee? Like you literally would do those things. Now, remember when I gave the example, I'm a big fan of recreation. I like to recreate experiences. You can do that virtually. Hey, I just got off a call. I was going to take a break. Do you have a meeting now? Do you want to just like, do you want to just chat? Like build relationships through empathy, through just you being a person, right? Like it's the same thing. You don't need to actually be next to the person to have that same experience. So just putting that out there, there are tons of ways to do it. You guys gave great examples. We're going to keep going because I still got a few more minutes here. Again, if you guys have questions, we're going to do our best. I'm switching to most upvotes again. Looks like some of these are not being populated. Okay, we're going to... Did I switch it? Okay, I'm trying to find the most upvoted ones here. Here's one that has 3. Okay, what's another approach besides sending monthly check-ins to your clients to see how things are going? Or whether they need assistance with anything without making it seem like another check-in email or make them feel like they are underutilizing us.
All right. I have to get emotional about this
Oh,
one
please
because
do, David, because I don't want to be the first one to get emotional.
I do not believe in check-ins with customers. If you can't talk to them and give them something of value, you have no business talking to them. To check in with a customer and call up and say, "Hey, just want to check in and see how you're doing." What you're telling the customer is, "I don't value your time, so I'm going to waste a little bit of it, but I have nothing of value to give to you." Right? So make sure you're delivering something of value. Don't call them check-ins. Don't put a check-in call in your customer journey. If you have check-ins in your customer journey now, 10 minutes after this call ends, go take it out of your customer journey and stop doing them.
I,
Thank you, David. Melody,
I,
what are your thoughts?
I have to laugh on that one because, to be honest, I've learned so much more about how a customer journey should look from, success coaching and from I've attended tons of these webinars because they're fantastic. Because what happens is, I'll give you an example and I won't name names, but manufacturer partners, they have their own programs. This is what customer success should look like. And you look at it and you're like, my customers don't have time for half of this stuff and they don't want to do some of this stuff because, and I'm fortunate to know that because I've worked with them in the past. So to your point and to David's point, I'm not going to check the box and do a QBR or a check-in or whatever you want to call it if the customer, whom I already know, is not down with it. If that's not their flavor, we don't go there. We do something that works for them.
Very good, guys. All right, we could probably squeeze in one more, so we're going to give it our best shot. Okay, we've got 4 minutes on the clock. We're going to have a buzzer beater. We're going to see if we can do this. Okay. Pooled CSM models naturally result in reduced customer context and surface level relationships, and notes can only capture so much. How can pooled teams overcome this to ensure that each one-on-one engagement feels personal, valuable, and supportive, and not like the customer is starting over with every new person they speak with?
100% communication. Talk amongst yourselves. You have to have that internal relationship that we touched upon earlier in order to have the appropriate external outreach. Because there is nothing worse than calling up a client and having them go, I already talked to blah, 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 XYZ person, and I told them this, and now they're irritated. I don't want that. Right? We can completely prevent that by, really leveraging those partnerships that we have internally and getting that information and sharing it so that everyone is stronger when they make those outreaches, whether it's within a CSM group or whether it's just within your larger organization.
David, what do you got for me?
Yeah, I would say, and I'll give you another out of the box kind of thing. So we talked about those applications. We talked about Sturdy AI. Sturdy AI would be a great product for something like this. And it just hit me when Melody was talking, right? Because if Sturdy AI can glean information from all of these conversations with different pooled CSMs that one customer is having and pull it all together, and I can couple that with like an account-based marketing drip program where I'm continuing to feed information to the customer digitally off of conversations that they had, it makes us look like we're one consistent company where the left hand, one of the problems with pooled CSMs is the left hand doesn't know what the right hand did, right? But if you can take an application that's looking at all these communications, pull them all together, and then communicate back something to the customer. Yeah, they may have talked to Kristi the first time and Melody the second time and David the third time, but our response to them shows that we all know what each other talked to them about, and we can do it digitally, especially if it's a pooled or a low tiered customer.
That's cool.
Yeah, listen, guys, I think it comes down to multi-channel versus omni-channel. right? Multi-channel is I use all of these different ways to communicate with you. Omni-channel is I know what the conversations are that are taking place in all of these areas. You've got to take that approach when you're dealing with these large customer bases. All right, guys, that brings us to the end of our session today. So we've reached the end. We did great. We have 1 minute left, and I'm going to get through our closing, but I want to just thank our guests first for joining us. So Melody, David, thank you guys so much for sharing your insights and your expertise and your experiences. Obviously, we could not have done this without you. Your contributions made our conversation today truly meaningful. So thank you so much. To our audience, thank you guys so much for your active participation. Thank you for confirming that I am a better host than Andrew. I really appreciate that. Maybe he will let me come back and do this again. But if you've got any thoughts about today's session, please share them on LinkedIn. Tag Success Coaching, tag Andrew, tag the team here, tag our guests, tag Success Hacker or Coaching. We'd love to hear your takeaways, so please make sure that you're doing that. Go ahead and mark your calendars. We do have our next CS Mastermind on March 19th. They will be exploring building trust and value in support interactions. Andrew will be back for that one. So I just want to thank you guys for having me today. Hopefully I did the best I could and a job serving this conversation really well. I'm going to leave you with this. Great customer-focused individuals know that they don't have all the answers, but they know where to find them, and that's why they created this series, not me. They do a great job here at Success Coaching. Please, if you don't know enough about them, go check them out. Wonderful resource. I ask that you all have a wonderful rest of your day, great rest of your month, and they'll see you next month. Thank you guys so much.